Hello, my name is Kiriath, and today we're just going to have a little chat about the previews and why I think a lot of people have found them a bit strange, a bit lackluster maybe, a bit disappointing, and it's because I was going back and looking through them, and the thing that struck me is that I think should like, I don't know, maybe 90% of what we saw in them have been released in the same day in a massive chunk as like advertised at Adepticon, like 4 hours of Warhammer reveals, 4 hours of Games Workshop stuff. Look at all the previews, the reveals, the biggest Adepticon presentation we've ever made, all of that stuff. If it had all come out in that one day, then I think it would have been what people thought it was. But the issue is that it hasn't been what people were expecting from the minute it got divided up into different previews. Now, a lot of people have been saying that doing them in different previews is a mistake. It should have just been one drop and that's it. That's the problem. Separating it all up, it builds up hype and then it's disappointing when it does arrive because we're expecting all of this stuff and we didn't get it. But the thing is, that isn't really an option either, because if you go back and look at the Warhammer community site and the Facebook page, when Games Workshop stopped production of everything, the way that content came out and the actual, I was going to say the content of the content, but that's a terrible way to phrase it, you know what I mean, the things that we were being told about changed as well. Sensibly so, because how are you going to do pre-order articles and new release articles and articles showing off brand new models that you'll be able to get in like a month's time when you can't get any models? Everything is temporarily out of stock. They're not making anything. And so those articles have disappeared. The thing is, those articles completely tie in with the way Games Workshop releases stuff now. So we have this kind of ongoing rolling release schedule whereby people, I think the expectation is people pick something up kind of weekly or bi-weekly. It's not like a whole drop of a massive thing. Every unit in an army gets an upgrade and everyone all at once. One massive dump, all today. You can buy it all today. It's all staggered releases. It's rolling releases that go on from one week to another. Sometimes it's interspersed with other stuff, like we've seen with the Sisters of Battle, where like half the army came out, and then there was a gap, and then the other half came out, and so on and so forth. We've got used to a steady drip feed of information and a steady drip feed of new models. Except that drip feed is now dried up, because Games Workshop have halted production, so they're not making anything new, or old, or anything at all. You can't buy anything from the site. Everything's just shut down. That baseline that we have, that baseline of information, that baseline of what we are used to seeing on a weekly basis is now almost totally absent. That's now gone. So what you are normally used to reading on a weekly basis is absent. And instead, what you've got are other articles, which is still decent, and then you've got the previews. The problem is that the expectation for the previews was set up on the basis of this continued drip feed of information that we normally get. And what we've got instead with the previews, instead of it being one massive chunk of extra special information that we're getting on top of all the stuff we'd normally get, we're getting essentially what we would get on a normal weekly basis anyway. That is something I've seen a lot of people say. That people just going, well, it just feels like the stuff that we'd see during the week anyway. It just feels like a Sunday preview. That's because it is. That's what it is, because we don't have those anymore. They are gone. They have all the stuff that they were going to do for Adepticon. They have all of that stuff ready. They have all of those reveals ready. They have all the information, all the trailers, all of it is set and ready to go. Now, when they stopped doing production and when they stopped shipping stuff out, I'd imagine there was probably a choice to be made. Do we scrap the previews and not show people anything? Or do we separate it up and space it out over a series of weeks so that we still have new content, we still get to show off new models, we still get to show off new books, we still get to show off new animations? Do we just cut it down and cut it off and not address it at all? Or do we continue to release it in place of what we would normally show on a weekly basis? Now, what they've done, obviously, is they've cut it down and they're showing it on a Saturday. So rather than getting this big chunk of information on top of what we'd normally see, we are now getting that big chunk of information split up into smaller chunks released every week. Well, nearly every week. We've had 2 in a row. They're skipping this Saturday, and then 18th of April, I believe, is the next one. That's not what anyone was expecting from any of this. Everyone was expecting that to be the additional extra information that you get from an event. Like an extra presentation. Not just the normal weekly stuff that we see all the time. No, this is extra stuff. This is more, even more than what we're used to. But it's not now. It's just what we're used to. We don't have the stuff that we had previously to compare it to. It is taking the place of what have become the routine, regular, and just expected articles. You know, we're used to seeing them. See them literally every week. We get a new thing every week. We know this. We are aware of it. It's been the model for God knows how long at this point. Except the model's gone. There is no model like that now because they can't make any of the things that they want to sell to us. And so instead you've got this weird situation where you have this huge bulk of info that you were looking forward to as the biggest preview ever, which has now become multiple smaller previews that don't feel all that special because there are no other previews or reveals to compare them to at all. You have just got the previews on the Saturday, and that's everything. That's your lot. That is not what we're used to. That is not how it has worked for a very long time. And the expectation of a massive drop of info followed by a drip feed of that same information is never going to feel as satisfying or as interesting. It is never going to feel as impactful. It is never going to feel as though you are getting what was originally advertised. And that's, I think, where the problem lies. A lot of the comments that I've seen are like, ooh, biggest reveal ever. Proper sarcastic, you know, half uppercase, half lowercase, SpongeBob style, biggest reveal ever. It can't be the biggest reveal ever anymore. It stopped being that the second they chopped it up, the second they decided to spread that content out over a matter of weeks, it stopped being that. It needs other stuff to go with it to make it that. It needs Games Workshop to be able to produce models, to produce books, to keep on top of the release schedule that literally everyone who is invested in any one of their games is used to. We are all used to the way that they release stuff. They are a model company that right now don't sell models and cannot advertise models to us reasonably because we can't buy them from them. They've had to cut all of that down. And so you're left in this weird situation where you have a complete expectation of one thing, which is a massive, massive preview. But that massive preview stopped existing like weeks ago now. They can't do that. If they dropped everything in that preview in one go, then they would be dry for weeks on end. Instead, it's being chopped up and it's being shown off of a weekend, and it feels like those Sunday previews that we get because it's taking the place of those Sunday previews that we get. Because we don't get them anymore. We don't see those. They're just not there. If you go to the community site, it is genuinely interesting to just watch, like to go back and just see the actual cut-off point, where it's like, and from that week, we just don't get those articles now. They're gone. That's why it feels weird. I think that's why it feels, to many people, so lackluster and so not what they're expecting. Because what was advertised is not what we're getting. What we're used to is not present anymore. And that baseline of information that we're so used to receiving, that baseline of previews that we're so just conditioned to expect, we don't have those and instead have something else that should have been a different thing entirely taking their place. I think that's why it feels so weird. And to be fair to like the community team, I think they're doing a decent job with them, and I think they're in a really kind of garbage position, to be honest. I'm going to go ahead and assume that there is not like one certain person at Games Workshop who knows when things are going to go back to normal, who just knows that, okay, we're going to start production on this day and everything will be back to normal after that. it's going to be a reactive thing. They're going to be going off guidelines from the government and from the NHS and the World Health Organization. They're going to have to be looking at like how to maintain safety for the staff, like what things they want to open when. They've also got to catch up on a release schedule that is now going to be weeks out of date. They've got to work out how to either catch up with that, whether they release more stuff on a weekly basis until they're caught up, or whether they just push everything, how that might impact things like trade shows later on in the year that wouldn't be affected by the current situation. And kind of underneath all of that decision making and all of that admin, you've got the Warhammer community guys who have a suddenly like vastly reduced amount of information to work with. They have a reduced amount of stuff to draw content from, and they have something that ordinarily would have been like an extra special, extraordinary dump of info that now is the only information that they can really give, but they need to do it in such a way that it's approachable, that they're not left with weeks of not being able to show anyone anything. There's going to be things like metrics and stuff that they need to keep on top of, and there's going to have to be some sort of maintenance of interest from the people that view the site and the people who go to Games Workshop for their plastic crack addiction. And the Warhammer community team are just having to react to all of that with, I'm assuming, no real idea as to when things are going to go back to normal. So yeah, I really, genuinely, I don't envy them at all. I really don't. I think to try and be the public face of a company that does what Games Workshop does, and has the model, like the business model they have, to try and be the public face of that at a time where you cannot provide your customers with the thing that they go to you for, so much that you can't even really show them new stuff that they're used to seeing on a weekly basis. That does not sound like a relaxing job to me right now. And yeah, I think that's just why it just feels so weird, because it is. It's so different, and it's not what we're used to, and that's why I think the previews just haven't gone down as well as they might have done otherwise, because the foundation of what would make that preview what it was is totally different, and so the way it's been shown is different again. I think that's really all it boils down to. But I would be interested to hear what you think. Let me know what you think of all that in the comments down below. Do you think there is something to that? Do you think it is because it's been separated up? Do you think it is the lack of regular drip feed releases that we're used to that is also contributing to it? And yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below. In the meantime, feel free to click all the things, Patreon, video, subscribe, all that stuff. Click it if you like, don't click it if you don't want to. It's entirely up to you. And as always, there's an affiliate link for Element Games in the description. They're still doing a few hobby supplies that are available. And yeah, if you use that, I get something for sending you that way. Supports the channel, and some of it goes to charity at the end of the month. So that's a thing you can do if you would like. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you for the next one.